We are finally in Molten Core for Phase 4 of Season of Discovery. Today, we're going to be looking at everything we need to know to succeed as a Balance Druid in Phase 4 of SoD. Let's jump straight into the action then. First things first, let's get our stat priority in order. Now, Molten Core does mean that we are going to need a whopping 16% on our spell hit rating as a Balanced Druid. Now, you may notice I only have 10% here. That is because we get a huge 6% from some of the new runes that we are taking in Phase 4 of SoD. So actually, total hit rating that you need to see on your character is 16%. How much do we need to get from other sources like gear? Well, that's only going to be 10%. So do take that into account with these numbers. Overall, it's 16. With the runes we're taking, it's 10% you need to get. Then we're going to be looking to get spell damage, nature damage, and arcane damage because of the nature of the spells we are casting as a Boomy. Now, one thing I must say is that spell damage is applied to the spells you cast based upon the casting time. There's quite a complex calculation that we could do that I'm not going to bore you with here, but basically any single target spells are going to get a 43-ish% bonus or effect from it, whereas AoE spells take an even greater penalty. However, short cast time spells, like Wrath, for example, gain a lot more benefit from this effect. Then, if we have really long cast times, let's say Starfire rather than Wrath, this is actually going to get 100% of the bonus. The reason I'm explaining this to you, in hopefully a digestible manner, is that so you understand that instant, short cast, AoE, and long cast spells will all perform differently based on the spell damage that we are getting, and this is going to impact which spells we're choosing in our rotation. Spell Critical Strike is another fantastic stat for Boomkins, and that is because of a talent I'm going to be showing you later called Vengeance, meaning we go up from 150 to 200% crit damage on our crits. However, it does rely on things like our Sunfire to actually be viable. So overall, it's a good stat to have, but not an absolute slam dunk. Speaking of our critical strike, we have Intellect, which actually does increase both our mana pool and crit as well. It is a bit of a lower impact than it used to be in Classic versus SoD, generally because we are going to be taking a rune called Fury of the Storm Rage, where basically one of our spells is completely free of mana, and therefore the extra mana that we get from Intellect isn't as important. The same goes for Spirit and MP5. We are going to retain some mana regen while casting due to one of the talents again I'm going to be showing you shortly. So Spirit and Intellect are still useful in that regard, but they're just not as good as some of the other stats like spell damage or intellect that we have here. So, speaking of those talents, let's start actually having a look at the ones we're taking. Considering this is Phase 4, and you likely have already been leveling up through the phases, which, by the way, if you haven't, do go and check out my Phase 1, 2, and 3 guides so that you basically have a part-by-part leveling guide, I guess, at level 25, 40 and 50 for you if you're not sure what talents to take at those explicit sections. A lot of these are going to be passive, like our Wrath, reducing the cast time of it, for example, fantastic because it's going to be free, and increasing our damage with some of our other spells. We do have Omen of Clarity here, a fantastic talent, imbues the Druid of natural energy. Basically, some of your melee attacks have a chance of causing us to enter a clear casting state. What does that mean? Well, the clear casting state reduces mana, rage, or energy cost of your next damage or healing spell by 100%, meaning that that spell is also free and lasts 10 minutes. Then we have Vengeance. This is the talent I spoke about earlier regarding our critical strike damage. This increases the critical strike damage bonus of your Starfire, Moonfire, and Wrath by 100%, meaning rather than 100% extra damage, it's actually 200%. And this is really, really fantastic when we're getting out those crits. This works really well with the Nature's Grace talent that we're taking here, where all spell criticals give you a blessing of nature, reducing the casting time of your next spell by 0.5 seconds. Really, all of the next few talents we'll be showing you are really important. Moonglow here, reducing the mana cost massively of some of your spells. And Moon Fury, increasing the damage of some of our spells massively by 10%. And lastly, of course, for just 1 talent point, we get the Moonkin talent. Absolutely extraordinary. Transforming you into Moonkins. While in this form, your armor contribution from items is increased by 360%, which is obviously massive. And all party members within a certain range will actually get an increased critical strike chance by 3% as well, meaning that this is actually a fantastic raid-wide buff for everyone. The only thing to mention is you can only cast balance spells while in this form. Now that we've gone through the balance tree, there's a few more talents we're putting in over into the restoration tree that are very useful for us. 5 out of 5 into improved Mark of the Wild, increasing the effects of that buff we're giving ourselves, party and raid members. Nature's Focus, basically using this to get down further into the tree, but if we do ever have a free healing touch, we can use this, of course, giving you a 70% chance to avoid interruption when casting healing spells. 2 out of 3 into Reflection, and this is why I want to get deeper into the tree. This allows 10% with the 2 points we have of your mana to regen while still casting your spells. Remember in the stat priority, I said that Intellect giving a bigger mana pool, and therefore Spirit and MP5 will give a little bit of a bonus to us Druids in Balance. This is why. And lastly, Insect Swarm, another DPS dot or damage over time that we can put into our arsenal. The enemy is targeted by a swarm of insects, decreasing their chance to hit by 2% and causing 66 nature damage over 12 seconds. So we've then got our Moonfire, Sunfire, and now Insect Swarm as well. Now on to the really exciting bit of what runes are we going to take. I'm going to go from left to right, top to bottom on these, starting off with the head rune, which is Gale Winds. This is going to increase the damage by 100% of your Hurricane spell, reduce the mana cost massively, and it's no longer going to be on cooldown. This is a fantastic area damage option if we need to do AoE, and it's going to basically single-handedly convert Druid from one of the worst AoE specs to one of the better ones. That does mean, though, we are hoping that enemies are actually going to stay inside the Hurricane for the full duration. If they go out of it, of course, the effect we're getting from this is going to rapidly decrease for the longer they are outside of that area. We have Fury of the Storm Rage on the chest, and remember, this is the one that is actually reducing the mana cost by 100% on our Wrath spell, meaning it's completely free. Each time you deal damage with Wrath, you're going to get a chance to have an instant healing touch, and this will be usable in Boomkin form. Remember, usually we can only cast balance spells in it, but with this rune, we can now cast healing touch when we get a free one in Moonkin form, and it's going to be instant, meaning that we can actually just use it, with a click of our fingers and help out our healers a little bit. And I am going to be putting that into the rotation I'll be showing you shortly. Then on the wrist, we have a Loon's Fires. Starfire is going to extend your Moonfire. Wrath is going to extend your Sunfire. Regrowth is going to extend Rejuvenation, which we're not really going to be using. And Shred extends Rip. Again, we're not going to be really using. So basically, again, Starfire extends Moonfire and Wrath extends Sunfire. This is a really good way. As you may have remembered, if you played the earlier phases, we were having to put up our dots so much that basically we were just running out of time. With this, we can keep our dots going a lot longer, and it's a fantastic rune to take. On the hand rune, of course, we're going for Sunfire. This is a damage over time that is pivotal to the rotation. Not much else needs to be said on that one. Then we have Eclipse. This is fantastic and really increases our DPS. Starfire increases the critical strike chance of your next 2 Wraths, and Wrath reduces the cast time of your next Starfire. So we do want to rotate these in the rotation. Both effects stack up to 4 times. Both spells can gain 70% chance at all times to not lose casting time when we take damage. Not really mattering too much. We're not really taking damage that often, of course, we're not a tank. Hopefully, that is fingers crossed. Star Surge, an instant attack here we can use. Launching stellar energies that cause damage. Arcane damage to be specific, and increases the damage done by your next 1 Starfire cast by 80% for 15 seconds. Star Surge benefits and triggers from most talents that also affect Wrath and Starfire, by the way. Then we have Dream State, another huge one. Your damaging non-periodic spell critical strikes grant you 50% of your mana regen while casting for 8 seconds, and increases nature damage dealt to the target for 12 seconds, which we will be doing as a Moonkin. These also have a fantastic synergy with Nature's Grace here. All spell critical strikes give you the blessing of nature, reducing the cast time of your next spell by 0.5 seconds as well, making those spells quicker. We then have Starfall, quite simply a fantastic AoE spell that we can use. And then lastly now, we have on the ring and other ring, Arcane and Nature specializations. Chance to hit with Arcane spells increased by 6%. and the same with nature. That's basically what those two do. And that is, again, where it comes into our hit rating with Molten Core bosses needing 16% spell hit, and that 6% on each ring is going to bring it down to 10% that we need from all other sources. Lastly now, how is it all going to come together into an actual rotation? Well, first things first, if we do get an instant healing touch, do make sure to use it. It's instant, you can use it in a click, and you may be able to help out your healers a little bit who may be struggling. If there are any curses and poisons that are on our allies, we can remove these with, you guessed it, remove curse and cure poison. There may be some that we don't need to, maybe they're not as strong, but maybe ask your raid leader or team if you're not sure which ones you should be trying to remove. And these are now compatible with Moonkin form, by the way. Use your Star Surge on cooldown. This is a massive part of your damage. You do want to try and use this when you have your full stacks from your Eclipse critical that is going to be provided from your Starfires, by the way. So try and keep up on those. Maybe use a weak aura if you need, etc. But that is going to really maximize your damage, making sure you do that. Starfall, we can use on cooldown as well. It is AoE, but it still does fantastic damage single target as well. Use Starfire whenever it's then buffed by your Star Surge, of course, using those two in a symbiotic relationship with each other. Maintain your Moonfire, maintain your Sunfire, and your Insect Swarm. Those are your 3 dots, and then cast Wrath as a filler. One thing to remember on that is Elun's fires. Remember, your Starfire will extend your Moonfire, and your Wrath, which you're using as a filler, will also actually extend your Sunfire. So when I'm saying keep those maintained, don't forget you will actually have a little bit of help on your side from the Elun's fires rune. If we're then looking at the AoE rotation, pretty much do the exact same thing, but use your Hurricane with Gale Winds as a big priority. Obviously, you want the mobs again to stay in it, and we can use our Starfire as well. Apart from that, rather than dotting one target up with Sunfire, Moonfire, and Insect Swarm, we want to try and do as many targets as we can. Generally, you're going to move to the AoE rotation like this when you have 4 or more targets. That's when it's going to be the most efficient to use this. Also, going back to the single target rotation of Tad here, I did say to use Wrath as a filler, but don't forget, because of the Eclipse rune, you will be getting quite a lot of crits out of this due to how this rune works. Remember, your Starfire increases the crit chance of your next 2 Wraths by 30%, and then Wrath will reduce the casting time of your Starfire by a second as well. And that is pretty much it, guys. That is how you're going to play Balance Druid in Phase 4 of Season of Discovery. If you do need any extra help at all, please do check out the description below for my Patreon. You can join there and DM me directly where I can give you some extra one-on-one help. And you can also import my UI and things like that. We have a lot of other resources on there, should that be something you need. And I am doing all classes as usual for Season of Discovery, so make sure to subscribe and check out those in the playlist on screen now.